So now I've gone to standing up and I have a microphone and, everything seems to be okay in that department. I do have to kind of adjust my posture to stay close to the mic. So you're going to have to forgive any perceived strangeness in my presentation here. I'm not used to standing and talking to my camera. See, I keep looking over at my monitor to see me when I should be looking. Legend of the Galactic Heroes is a anime from Japan that started airing, I believe, in 1988 or 87, and it is based on a light novel series, I believe, that came out earlier on in the early 80s, and I knew nothing about it up until probably about 10-ish, bit more years ago, and I have tried getting into it several times over the years. I've made it, like, I would say, to episode 8 5 times. Like 10 years ago I made it to episode 2 or 3 and was like, and then a few years after that I made it to episode 4 or 5 and was, but I most recently was like, you know what, fuck it, let's get this shit done finally, and I'm so happy. It's everything I love in a series like this. It's a space opera, it's got political intrigue, it's got interesting enough battles that have enough strategic plays, believable on both sides and explained with surface level, but enough depth for these schemes and trickery and backstabs to all be very clear and satisfying as a result. Oh, and by the way, I have to say I'm only talking about episode 1 to 25, the first series before the intro changes. Episode 1 to 26, I'm sorry. And I'll go spoiler free. I'll let you know whenever spoilers are going to begin to enter into the discussion, so stop before then. So no spoilers in the comments, please. I'm only up to episode 26, so spare me the comments for future episodes and spare any hypothetical viewers who might watch it and haven't the spoilers, please. The conceit of the story is, in this galaxy there is a interesting history which I won't get too much into. At present in the story there is two warring factions. There is the Alliance, which broke off from the Empire 300 years prior to the beginning of our story, and there is the Empire, which is the de facto ruler. They ruled the galaxy before the Alliance broke off 300 years prior, but of course there was other stuff before that, but for the sake of this story, that's all we need to know for now. We have a protagonist from each side. We've got the Empire, which is more, they are like a monarchy, but they're closer to a military dictatorship. The monarchy, especially as the series goes on, is kind of like the way the king is in the Foundation books. You know, you've got this young emperor, or a emperor, but might be young, might not, but often young, that is controlled by aristocrats around them. But in this world, it is, the military controls pretty much the important stuff. They have the power, essentially. And the king, or the Kaiser, very much kind of just a figurehead. And on that side, we have, is arguably the main character of the whole show, because dude's on all the posters, Reinhard von Lohengram. Oh, these names. So Reinhard von Lohengram is who we're following on the Empire side. While he is the factor that, in a certain episode, won me over, he has a moment where you get a bit of his backstory, and he really clicked for me. We'll get to that. We'll get back to that. But at the end of the day, I don't know if he's the most interesting character. On the other side, so that is the Empire side. In general, there's a lot more going on, but that is the surface level. And then on the other side, we have the Alliance. That is more the democratic faction. They're kind of the underdogs, but they are a proper military power. And there's something to fear as long as they have someone, a capable leader, to lead them to victory. Victory is possible for the Alliance. It is definitely, the balance is not in their favor, but it is not an unwinnable war. This side is very much a democracy. They vote in leaders. As a result, you've got the one side that is military dictatorship / monarchy with Nazi vibes. They're dressed quite sharp like Nazis, wear They are all of German influence. They're undeniably drawing from that imagery and symbolism and historical context for the Empire, and they're called the Empire. And that draws from other fictional stories as well. And there is some other Star Wars stuff we can get into as well. And I know when you talk about pulling from Star Wars, then you can talk about Star Wars pulling from Carter and all of this stuff, but it's a whole other discussion that. So the Alliance, as a result of this, is kind of framed as the good guys. We've got elected officials, a lot of which are very detestable, but that's a whole thing with people, human beings, elect horrible people all the time. Because of this, you kind of lean into being like, okay, the Alliance, they're kind of like the good guys here. Let's default to wanting to root for the Alliance. And the lens in which we are experiencing the Alliance through, initially at the very least, is Yang Wen Li. You can immediately see that is not a German influenced name. The names in the Alliance are all super, super varied. You got someone named Yang Wen Li, and he is good friends with somebody named Jessica Edwards. Also good friends with someone named Julian. So you can see that the Alliance is very much the envisioning what humanity could potentially look like if it was to get to a spacefaring stage. But Yang Wen Li is very much similar to Reinhard von Lohengrin in that they are both relatively low in the hierarchy of the military. They've got some authority, but they are by no means admirals. They're not leading fleets of men into battle. They are following orders and maybe giving their advice to their commander on the ship or whatever. That is how we enter the story. Two warring sides, one through the lens of Yang and one through the lens of Reinhard. And this might be a good point to interject the watch order shenanigans with this. So recently when I decided, I'm actually going to try get into this for real and get through it all, because there's about 100 episodes, I looked up watch order. And people were like, okay, do this, and there's a remake series you can watch, and some people say the remake's better for X, Y, and Z reasons, and some people say blah, 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 blah. And there's all this debate about which version is the best to watch, and some people said you should watch these two movies, or a movie. There's two movies, a prequel one, and then there's one that does the first 3 episodes of the anime, but does them higher budget and better and whatever, with a bit more details and more expanding on some scenes and stuff like that. And while I haven't watched that, I think I will eventually get around to that. But there is so much confusion, I was just like, you know what? Fuck it, I don't care. I'm just going to watch the anime. I'm just going to watch the anime, the named Legend of the Galactic Heroes show. Just going to watch that. A nightmare to find. It's not very easy to it was not fun trying to find it. So yeah, if you are going to watch it, I guess look into the which ones you should watch. I'm watching the original, so I don't know if that's the wrong call, but I'm really enjoying it, and I think I feel like I've made the right call because it's great so far. But as a result of this setup, it allows it to explore these two different styles of politics and how someone might navigate these two political structures, and also how they might rise through these political structures. And that is ultimately what the story is. It is this galactic war between the Alliance and the Empire, and you're following the rise of these two upstart, very, very intelligent young men as they vie for ultimate power, and both have very different motivations and both have very different styles. So I'm going to start getting into early season spoilers now, so be careful. If anything I've said so far has interested you, then go watch it. It's great. I'm really enjoying it. I have complaints, but they don't matter. If this has interested you so far and you think you can get past some 80s anime jank, then go for it. Because even some anime nowadays is low budget because, time constraints, budget constraints, etc. So think of that and then minus, 40 years worth of technology. But if you keep that in mind, it's great. 40, 30, whatever. So there's a third player in this scheme, and this is introduced in episode 1, so I could have mentioned it already, but it's become way more relevant just near the end of this season, or at the end of this season. So I only wanted to mention it now when I started to get into a little bit more spoilery stuff. There is a third faction, an independent faction, which comes from the planet Phezan, Phezzan, and what's his name? It's something Rubinsky. I can't remember it. It's like Adrian, I think. I think it's Adrian feels right. Adrian Rubinsky. But Adrian Rubinsky, he is the leader of of this third independent faction, as they trade with both the Alliance and the Empire, and through politics they've managed to stay independent. And the leader of that is Rubinsky, and he has his own schemes going on. But as we go on through the story, the thing that we'll get back to, the thing that really got me into it, finally, the thing that hooked me, was when we finally learn a bit of Reinhard von Lohengram's backstory. And he has this scene with Kirschis. I apologize if I'm saying that right. I think it's Kirschis. The redhead friend of his. He has a conversation with him as a youngster. When you first see them young, they are spying on a noble's ball. And von Reinhardt pontificates, why, if there's this war going on, how can they just dance and sing while men are dying? And good question. And then when he's a little bit older, after he's in the military for a few years and he's learning and he's growing up a bit, he decides, and this is the bit that really got me into the show, that he's basically going to be God Emperor of the universe. It's such a Griffith moment, and his motivations seem super pure, and these nobles are terrible and they're throwing away innocent lives. Also, they can live their lavish and opulent lifestyles like pigs, blah, blah, blah. But there is this seed this current underneath, and you can sense it immediately if you've read any of these kinds of stories before. Immediately you're like, oh shit, this is like a really fucking charismatic kid who's pretty fucking smart and has a little bit of a god complex. And there's that famous quote that if someone truly believes that what they're doing is for the greater good, then they will justify anything. He's saying these noble things, but you're like, what you want is total fucking power. And you're a smart... And that's a recipe for disaster. And you know that because you get these flashbacks after you've seen him at work, and you know how capable he is, and you know how far he can go and will go, because he's basically on all the posters. He's the protagonist, essentially. So you know he's going to go really fucking far. And if they present this bright-eyed, bushy-tailed young kid with this big ambition for these noble reasons, you know what that's... You know exactly where that's going. They've begun to strip down that noble cause, whittle away at his convictions and his principles. Gradual at first, and good pace for this kind of story. And it ramped it up a lot more near the end. So I don't want to say more than that until I get later on into the video about that specific aspect. But when that flashback happened, I had these moments just where my brain shot into the future, and it followed all the threads where this story could go and all the directions it likely could go as a result of what it's showing me, because you know what it's setting up if it's giving you this context to the character. And that's when I was like, oh, that's what this story is. Okay, I'm in for this. And that was the thing that really got me past that initial hump of, this is old, it's a bit janky, Foley work is bare bones, and it's just classical music, which is fine. I like classical music. But all of that combined is a hard sell for me. But I got over the hump when that little bit of character and development and foreshadowing was revealed for Reinhard von Lohengram. Yang's progression this season has been very cool as well. So he's kind of the opposite. He is just as talented, but he lacks the charisma, and he's completely disinterested. He's completely disinterested in the war effort, doesn't like the Empire and thinks that they're bad, obviously. But he doesn't have this grand ambition that Reinhard von Lohengram does. So he's kind of forced into this role of leadership, and he stumbles his way up the ladder, as opposed to Reinhardt, who connives his way up the ladder. And they mirror each other. They very much are mirrors of each other, like both. And it is a bit of a tired trope. There's a good amount of dated things in the show that I'm not a huge fan of. And one of the things is both both Reinhard von Lohengram and Yang Wenli have a female that is kind of their beacon, their North Star, their guiding light. So it's a bit of a tired trope, but just they are mirrors of each other. I do enjoy the structure of the show. It jumps back and forth a lot. You'll, like, one episode, it's not necessarily Alliance, Empire, Alliance, Empire, Alliance, Empire. In fact, sometimes we might go a full episode without seeing any of Yang or Reinhard von Lohengram. You could go an episode where you're getting a small mini arc with the Alliance. Maybe they suspect there's a traitor, or maybe there's an assassination attempt happening and you're following that and the machinations going on there. And then you'll jump over to the Empire for 2-3 episodes, or maybe you'll jump over the Empire for 1 and then go back to the Alliance and back to the Empire, and then you get 3 empires. So it's not super, like, it keeps you on your toes in terms of what you're going to be getting next. And they'll throw in, because some of these, since it's an intergalactic war, there will be other planets and characters involved and important that aren't going to be around for very long, specifically planets that are caught between the war of the Empire and the Alliance. And some of my favorite episodes actually were about these smaller conflicts, these interplanetary conflicts. That's not the right word. These within planet conflicts, as opposed to the interplanetary conflicts. Which is a good point to bring up the battle sequences. I'm watching it subbed. I don't know if there is a dub. And anytime a new character comes up on screen, it shows the character's name and their rank. And it feels important to catch that. But also, the subtitles, they just fucking go, man. They don't give a shit. So I have had to pause and rewind a bunch to try and keep up and catch subtitles, catch all the dialogue as well as the names of the characters. So that's been fun. But as a result of that, battle sequences can often sometimes boil down to a moment. There's a big moment in the battle. There'll be really, really cool shots of actual warfare and battles happening. And then it'll cut to within the cockpits or the command centers of these flagships. And you'll see the admirals or the leaders of these ships who you are named characters who you're familiar with. And they will be like looking at a screen with a simplistic graphic representation of the battle and the troop movements and stuff. Fleet movements would be a better way to phrase that. And that's really, really, really cool. And it's very helpful. You kind of have to suspend your disbelief a little bit because it is a little bit simplistic and be like, all right, so they're just using these, you know, abstract shapes to juggle sometimes hundreds of thousands of lives. But, you know, there might be, there's a funny commentary there as well, I guess. You can look at it in that way. Because of that, there's dialogue happening during all of this, and it's cutting between the battles and then into the command centers, and then there'll be dialogue happening all the while, and then it might show a new character who will die 30 seconds later. But it gives you the name and rank anyway, and the name of their ship. The amount of times in battle I was like, okay, new character, pause. Okay, they're in the flagship of this fleet. Okay, that's their name. Cool. Okay, their admiral watched such and such. Got it. All right. And he's dead. Oh, that notwithstanding, the battles are all quite cool, and I like them. I rewatched the first episode before making this video just because I wanted to remind myself of anything from earlier on that I might have forgotten. It actually introduced one of my favorite characters who, if you'd put a gun to my head before rewatching the first episode, I would have been, and asked me, when was this character introduced? Mittermeier. I would have been like, oh, episode 10? But no, he's there in episode 1. Him, the guy whose name I can't forget with the discolored eye, he's got one paler eye and he's black hair, very neat. Oberstein is eavesdropping them in the first episode, which is a detail I liked. But apart from the pausing issue, which is a language barrier, it's not an issue with the show, I guess. The battles are all very cool. The sequence is clear, and they're so committed to the classical music shtick that it is. At first, you're kind of like, it's a bit cheesy. They're really going all in on this. They're trying to evoke a vibe maybe too hard. They're trying too hard a bit, but by episode 23, when there's a big battle going on, the music is just carrying you through. Oh, it was all so wonderful. By the end of it, I was so into the battles. It took a while, and it might take 2 or 3 battles for you to really get into it, but after a while I really started to feel the battle sequences, and the battle sequences are all enhanced by the context in which they are being fought, which brings me to the politics of the show.
どうやら本物らしいな。いや、爆弾でも積んでるんじゃないかと。
I could do a whole podcast just discussing this show, but I can't spend too long discussing all of the players, so I'll discuss some of the most interesting aspects. There will be now mid-seasons, like episode 15 areas spoilers, so...
形式というのは必要かもしれませんが。
So eventually a civil war breaks out on both sides, and it is a great culmination of a bunch of scheming that is a foundation was laid slowly and gradually, and then after you're comfortable following Yang and Reinhard von Lohengram, that's when they really shake it up on both sides, and both sides have to stop focusing on each other and focus on internal struggles. It is so satisfying seeing how, spoiler alert, both of them succeed in quelling the civil wars, and as a result position themselves really highly. Yang less so than Reinhard. Reinhard basically becomes king. He is standing next to the king who basically has no power. So Reinhard he is the shit now. And Yang, known as Miracle Yang throughout the Alliance and the Empire, is now in a position where he has maybe one of the most influential spots in the military. And while Yang isn't quite God Emperor yet, if ever, probably never will, he is almost single-handedly to be thanked for ending the Civil War. So I haven't seen where that goes quite yet for him, but it's gonna be good news for Yang. And how Yang managed to win by just destroying the weapon, he did what happens in The Expanse. Spoilers. What Yang did with those with the ice was so good. I don't know if it makes any fucking sense scientifically, but rule of cool, I didn't give a fuck. My brain was enjoying that. I was getting all the dopamine. Shit was firing around in there. It was wonderful. I absolutely loved it. I was smiling like a fool. It was such a great payoff, and it was like Yang's big moment. It was his mission statement. Like, this is, if you kill people I care about, I will do what I can to end you as quick as I can. And he doesn't want to kill you. He just wants you out of the way. He doesn't want you to be hurting anyone else. And after the whole riots with Jessica Edwards, I wonder, we haven't really seen, like, so his icicle plan to take out the Artemis necklace, that was after Jessica Edwards' death, but we haven't really, he's way more introspective or outrospective. He's more thinking about the context of the entire war now. So I'm very curious to see how Yang's philosophy will change going forward in season 2 after Jessica's death. And I want to know how stuff on, it's a harder to say name for me, Capital Planet of the Alliance. I'm super interested to see where that goes for Yang. It's also pretty funny, and I don't think it ever means to be. This guy's saying, fire on that ship! I need to escape from this battle. And this guy's saying, but there are friendlies, we can't kill them. And he's like, I said fire! Whoever they are, fire! And the next shot is this. I wonder what's gonna happen here. They're cute, aren't they? Twins. That's great. You're a father. I feel like a father until I hold myself. I really want to get home soon. Energy wave closing the enemy. No, it's our allies. Oh no! But there are some seriously funny moments. And there's some comedy moments as a result of the time it came out. Just, you know, very bare bones Foley. There is just that. Listen, hold on. I've probably done a small bit of editing on this audio to clean it up a little bit for the video, but I'm just going to give you the raw audio starting now. This is the raw audio, and if I stop talking, you hear that buzz. So that sound is the kind of thing you would record. That is what you'd record room tone with. You would record room tone to eliminate that sound either being noticeable at all, or you'd have it edited out already, whatever. There's things to do for that sound. But when there's no dialogue or anything in this, this all takes place on mostly spaceships, really. So when there's no dialogue or anything, it is just... And as a result of that, there are several moments. You've seen that trope a million times where somebody says something and it hits the group of people in a certain way and they all stop and look at each other, whether it's with worry or with, oh, who's going to do it kind of thing. This, pregnant silence. Well, hilarious. Listen to the sound. Sorry, listen to the sound just drop. All these people looking at each other. Really awkward. I've probably cut them in and you've seen. They're really goofy, but they're very, very funny. Those are two very funny standout moments. And there's a few other moments where it's a bit groany, where you're like, ugh, where they introduce someone and it's like, oh, this person's clearly about to die. Not all the time. There's a few people when they introduce a flagship, I was always like, okay, a flagship. Cool, new character, let's go. And they died. Okay. I guess it's cool like that. There are characters won't die, for sure. For instance, one of the most interesting characters in the show is Oberstein. And they do a very interesting thing with Oberstein that in episode 1, you've heard there's a civil war. So if you don't care about that, then you're not going to care about anything I'm about to say. But I'm going into even more detail now rather than the broad strokes of the plot. So if you don't want details, if you want to find out the details yourself, and you should because it's a great show, stop right now. Especially because Oberstein is a fascinating character, rising up through the ranks while only looking out for yourself and through purely Machiavellian means. And at one stage, Reinhard von Lohengram says in response to something that Oberstein recommends, he's like, this is a core principle of Machiavelli's philosophy. You know that, right?
一部の犠牲を容認する必要に迫られる時があります。それは初歩的なマキャベリズムの論法だな。
Reinhard von Lohengram literally says to Oberstein, you Machiavellian fuck.
一部の犠牲を容認する必要に迫られる時があります。
You little Machiavellian fuck.
Which is very funny to me. I love that. But in episode 1, it's revealed that he has robot eyes that can record. And of course, in episode 1, you're like, okay, yeah, that's going to be relevant. I won't forget that. And it's not relevant. And it hasn't come up yet. So... unless I'm forgetting it, maybe it did and I'm forgetting, because I did watch it over the course of 2 or 3 months, 26 episodes. So the earlier stuff, maybe something happened in episode 6 or 7 and I'm forgetting that. But I'm pretty sure his robo-recordy eyes have not come into play yet. So every single time he's in the room, I'm always like, everything here is at some stage could be potential blackmail. Absolutely everything. Every time he's in the room, everyone should shut the fuck up. But he has positioned himself to be at Reinhard von Lohengram's side. And big spoiler now, if you don't want something like the most impactful moment of the whole first season is about to be spoiled to you. So stop now for real. But Reinhard von Lohengram's childhood friend and right-hand man, he is killed as a result of the Civil War when they're interviewing prisoners. And you could argue it's a direct result of Oberstein's actions or Oberstein's influence at the very least. So it's very interesting that Oberstein has been set up very early on to be only looking out for himself and to always be ready to, he's a turncloak, he's a cutthroat, he's no allegiances. He has allegiance to whatever keeps him consistent power. So all of that combined, the eyes, his lust for power, his means of acquiring power, he's now at arguably the most powerful man in the universe's side, replacing his childhood friend. He has his ear for everything and also potential blackmail material forever about everything. I'm very, very interested in what Oberstein's going to be doing, and he's always shown to be listening, he's always shown to be watching. The voice actor for Oberstein is wonderfully monotone. I couldn't talk that monotone if you gave me a year to train. He exclusively just talks like this, essentially. and he never changes tone beyond this. Everything that he says kind of trails off into blah, 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 blah. And it's almost like he's trying to lull you to sleep, or he's talking to a child, a baby going to sleep. Infinitely condescending. He is condescension personified.
誰が犯人だというのだ。帝国最小リヒテンダーデコ。
He's such a great character. I'm very, very excited. He's one of the most interesting aspects now. I was really interested in Reinhardt's and Kershey's relationship. Pretty queer-coded, and I was curious if they were actually going to go full on and have an openly gay character in this anime from the 80s. I thought that would have been really cool, but they didn't go that direction. So it was super coded. I'm not crazy with that. Like, there was some serious queer coding going on between them two. So I thought that would go somewhere, but again, it's from the 80s, so I was pretty certain that it was going to just remain in the realm of coded and not go any farther than that. So that is what it is. So I did watch the intro for season 2, and it seems like Hilda, who's a great character. I think her name's Hilda. She was basically sent out into the world by her father. Her father was like, yeah, the family's fucked. You just use the family as a tool to get as far as you can in life, essentially. And it was great because the way the character was introduced, this female, she was introduced to be quite meek and, oh, father this, father that. And I was like, oh, this is an interesting character. She might be Reinhardt's love interest, which I think I'm right about. And these are my thoughts at the beginning of the episode. You know, I wasn't expecting a huge amount from her. I thought maybe she'd die in an episode, or, you know, just be there for one arc. But by the end of the episode, I was like, oh, wait a minute. This bitch gonna do some war crimes. She's gonna do some serious war crimes at some stage. She's got that streak, and I'm very excited to see what they do with her. She seems to be based on the season 2 intro, because I had to hear the song. I had to just hear the song. I haven't watched the first episode of the second season, but I had to hear the song they used. And I did watch the visuals. There's a shot of her standing behind Reinhardt in a very like, oh, way. So it does seem to be that she's going to be a love interest for Reinhardt von Lohengrin. The way she was introduced and the vibes I was getting from her, I think if Reinhardt was going to have any love interest apart from Kershey's, it totally makes sense that it would be somebody like her. And I want to go rewatch the introduction of her now, because she stood out at the time, but she didn't really have a huge amount of sway in the goings on, the greater actions of the story. So I'm very excited to see what it does in the future, and how my initial read of her pans out. That's going to be interesting. The Empire has a lot of the most interesting characters, but I think a lot of the more interesting plot stuff is happening on the Alliance. I love what's happening with Trunhild, the politician who is super conniving, the one who keeps tricking Yang into photo ops when Yang isn't expecting it, and making it look like to the public through the media that Yang is always supporting this politician, when Yang is just like walking through the airport, and then he's approached and shake hands, photos, haha, oh, thanks for supporting me, but he doesn't really give a shit, and he's always really mad by it.
あの時は危なかった。え？鳥ユニストと握手した時さ。あの男は今回も傷つかなかった。アムリッツァの時もそうだ。自分で大きな嵐を呼び込み、嵐の間は身を潜めて、自分は決して傷つかず。
I really like that aspect, and he seems to be working in tandem with the Earth cultists, the Terra cult. To get back to something I mentioned earlier, there is basically Palpatine. It's in the hologram form. That is basically in this same, you think of Palpatine in hologram, they do that in this. But Adrian Rubinsky seems to answer to this shadowy hooded figure who we have no identity for yet.
Rubinsky.
Oh. But this person seems to be either using it as a tool, or legitimately believes that Earth, Terra, is some kind of, it holds religious significance to these people, or claim it to be, so they can use this cult as a tool for political gain, whatever. But I'm really invested in that stuff, and I'm super curious to see how that all plays into the Alliance. The Terra stuff is cool. I love the relationship between Julian and Yang. I think Julian is going to be very, very cool when he gets older. He's probably going to do some badass shit. I'm bummed about Jessica. I thought she was going to be more significant, so that was a powerful death. I wasn't expecting that. I thought she would be the political power behind Yang's military power, and they would be working in tandem. I think Julian might take that role. We'll see. But see, this is what I mean. I love the Alliance. There's a lot of plot. I love the plot stuff going on in the Alliance, and I love a lot of the character stuff going on in the Empire. But yeah, there's a lot of... Oh god, there's so much I could talk about. I haven't even mentioned Mittermeier or the Gale Wolf. He's a side character I've become shockingly attached to. Two final things I want to end on. The thing that convinced me to make this video. I was watching it after Kershey's died. I was shocked. I was like, oh my god, what? I was mouth agape because I was shocked, because I was expecting he was going to make it all the way to the end, and I thought there would be a moment when Yang and Kershey's would have a showdown and Yang would have to kill Kershey's. Then that would give Reinhardt some even more motivation to take down Yang, and that was how it was going to go down in my head. So for Kershey's to just die the way he did, by a gun pulled out of a corpse's torso, and it was cool and it was shocking. It was a bit goofy that nobody stopped him when he started rooting around inside of a dead man's stomach. That would be the moment I would have been like, hey, maybe stop that. Apart from that, it was a very effective death. I was convinced to do this video so I was just watching that, taking it in, and shocked, but I was like, okay, my primary thought was, this is a compelling complication in the plot. I'm excited to see how this affects Reinhardt von Lohengram going forward and the war as a whole. And then, at the end of the episode, they do this thing. I was talking to a friend about this recently. It's something that I've only realized that I really love in fiction. It's something that I go to fiction for. And I've only realized this recently. And it's something that I've, again, only really recently realized. I've incorporated something that I really, really try to capture very strongly. It is one of my main goals. Apart from writing a good story, obviously, but one of my main goals in my own stories is to capture this feeling that you are experiencing a story that would, in 1,000 years, 2,000, 3,000 years, scenes that you've read will be depicted on a stained glass in a church, or there will be etchings when civilization has fallen and stories remain Book of Dave style, Book of Dave by Will Self, or Ridley Walker. That's a world like that, where the ideas have followed through into post-apocalyptic civilization. And as civilization reemerges, like say they would make etchings of these stories that have passed down through the ages. I'm thinking of the family trading their child for a pot and with a stranger in Ridley Walker, when the stranger comes to the fireplace and is like, "I have a pot and no food, and you have food and no pot." And they're like, we don't have food. What are you talking about? And he's like, yeah, you got a baby right there. In fairness, come on, like. And they're like, okay, cool, let's trade. We put our baby inside your pot, and that equals food. But that's like a story passed down, and it is kind of like an amalgamation of... read Ridley Walker. It's a fucking phenomenal story. Russell Hoban. Such a great story. But that story in Ridley Walker is like an amalgamation of the history of how the world got the way it was and the way people might have lived, but telling it as if it was one family experiencing one thing. But that is like kind of thing that I'm talking about, but at a meta level within a story. To give you an example of some that I can think of off the top of my head, there's some in Attack on Titan. I was talking to my friend about this, and this is the conversation that sparked the thought. He mentioned the scene where Eren is mutilating himself in the trenches, and thinking about what that means for humanity, and how to an outside observer there is a crazy man cutting off his leg and puncturing his own eye out in a trench. To a third party observer there who might just be passing in the trench or whatever, that is like someone who's just lost their mind. They've gone crazy and they are mutilating themselves for whatever reason. But to maybe not on a first view, but on a second view, and in analyzing it from a story perspective, this is maybe one of the most significant watershed moments in human history, literally ever. Because I don't want to spoil Attack on Titan, but if you've read it then or watched it, then you know what I mean. But it's just a dude in his trench, and like that imagery is really striking. And thinking about it in the context of how important it is within the context of its world, I love that. And Legend of the Galactic Heroes does it wonderfully, and they kind of fucking cheat, but they cheat so well, so it's okay. They have a narrator, and it's not just the fact that there's a narrator, but it's how he phrases things. So he'll start off episodes often being like, space year 797.
宇宙歴797年4月20日、ヤン艦隊は正式にその通称を認められてから初めての出動を迎えた。
Empire year, whatever, but the battle of such and such waged for 3 months, that kind of thing. When Yang Wenli learns of Jessica Edwards' death, he puts his head down and the narrator says something along the lines of,
ジェシカ・エドワーズの死を知らされたヤン・ウェンリーはそれについて一言も発しなかったと。
and this is before he does his crazy big plan to win the Civil War. But it just really, it plucked this chord in me, this, whereas like, wow, this feeling of, it gave me this feeling like I was a fly on the wall the day the plans for D-Day, this to storm Omaha Beach, were finalized. This kind of thing, you know, as if you could see these historical events happening, something you could never actually see happen. That's something I love in great fiction. And one in the last episode that really hit me, and it made me tear up. I didn't cry when Kershis died, but they show this moment at the end.
帝国元帥の称号を授け、生前に遡って帝国軍参長官の地位を与えた。
キルヒアイス、姉上が見えたのか。
だが彼がその墓碑に刻んだのはマインフロインと我が友の一言であった。
もはや失うものは何もない。だがなればこそ俺は戦う。お前との制約を守るため。そして。
And it's a combination of what's happened, who's involved, everything we've experienced so far, the music, the imagery, and the narrator, and how the narrator chooses to deliver this information, and that historical feeling that I was talking about. All of that just came together, and I was like, yeah, we're arting right now. We're arting it up. This is a nice tapestry of feelings and emotions and themes and images and sounds and words, and I really enjoy it. Those are some reasons I like Legends of the Galactic Heroes. There's a brief discussion of episode 1 at 226. The last thing I wanted to say was in regards to the stripping away of Reinhard von Lohengram's principles. So Oberstein manipulates him and tricks him into accidentally allowing the death of 2 million people.
You little Machiavellian fuck.
And that's bad, and Kershis scolds Reinhardt for it, and Reinhardt's like, I knew and it was my choice and it's fine, even though it's not necessarily true, but he was trying to look like a competent leader. And he's questioning this strongly before Kershis died, but then Kershis dies, and the next episode, or in the same episode, he finishes mourning, because of Oberstein, again, Oberstein's influence, he finishes mourning and then orders the execution of every child over the age of 10. And he says, I went into military service at the age of 10. So any kid younger than that, they shouldn't suffer any consequences because they don't know anything yet. They're only younger than the age I specifically was when I went into military service. But anyone older, they have to die.
で、一族は
女子供は辺境に流刑。10歳以上の男子はすべて死刑。
御意。
私が幼年学校に入ったのは10歳の時だった。その年齢までは一人前とは言えまい。よって命は。
Reinhardt, I didn't think you would go that deep so quickly after Kershis' death. Like, Kershis was like, you know, it's an angel-devil situation. Kershis, Oberstein, Reinhard von Lohengram. And I didn't think that angel would get fucking murdered so quickly. And when it did, I did not think the devil would win so fast.
光には影が付き従う。 光が陰れば影もまた。
I might do another one of these. I'm very, 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 very excited to continue forth. I want to just stop. See, now I want to go and rewatch episode 1 to 26 and get really familiar with the political scheming, and then come back here and just talk about it for 10 hours and just talk about each single individual thread and why I really enjoyed them and what made them interesting and what made some of the ones not so interesting. And I'm very Legend of the Galactic Hero brained right now. On that note, I'm going to end the video. I'm all the way down here in the corner now. So thank you very much for watching. If you made it this far, I don't know how you pulled it off. I'm going to just keep talking now for a second so I can, in my head, like I'm like fading in the music. It is just about, it's basically reached peak music volume now. And last video I did like a freeze frame thing, and I don't know if I'm going to continue to do the freeze frame thing. Because I'm not huge into gimmicks, and it's like I'm not trying to carve an identity here. I just want to talk about the things I'm enjoying. So I don't know if I'll do that. It might be funny if none of that music stuff happened, and I just like cut to black now. Every time I say it would be funny if I do a thing, then I think future me is going to spite me from now and not do that thing. So I don't know what future me is going to decide to do. But now me is going to stop.